you all know me, Yvonne Schwab, ACG Silicon Valley CEO. Super excited to see you and have you join us for our Female Executive Leaders Circle and our fireside chat with Beena Ammanath, Executive Director of the Global Deloitte AI Institute, and so much more. For those of you, well, none of you are new, so you know my spiel that, we're the leading business-to-business networking organization and provide connections, thought leadership, and enabling personal and organizational growth. You all know that we have a bunch of events coming up. Check our website to stay current. Next week, we have a panel discussion on ethical supply chain management. On September 29th, Dell is hosting an event on cyber resiliency. We also have our next ACG California chapters e-lunch coming up, which we are hosting this time. And let's not forget one of our most attended events, the Round Robin with our San Francisco sister chapter. These are always fun and so desperately needed, I feel, during these, for networking during these challenging times that we still seem to find ourselves in. I would now like to introduce you to our special guest, Beena Ammanath, and I'm not even sure I'm saying the last name correctly. Welcome. Beena, tell us, who is Beena? And give us a little overview over your life, your career, and we'll get to know you a little bit better.
Sure, and you said my name right. That's great, and I'm glad it's actually a small group today, so that we can keep it very interactive and conversational. And just jump in if you have any questions. Don't hesitate. So I'm a technologist by training, very traditional. Studied computer science, did my undergrad and grad in computer science, and then did an MBA in finance to round it out. And I've been in the technology space, always anchored on working with data, on data. There's a software engineering path, and then there is a data path. So when I started out, we didn't have big data or machine learning or anything like this. It was more transactional databases. So I've done all kinds of roles, right from developer to DBA to managing data teams. My career path anchored on data, but I was very curious about different industries and different companies. So I've got a variety of experiences under my belt. Like I've worked at British Telecom, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, E-Trade when it was a startup, a couple of startups that don't even exist anymore. Then GE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and now at Deloitte. So, I call it my career mosaic of, a variety of experiences just anchored on data. I also started a nonprofit called Humans for AI about 4 years ago, and it's focused on primarily increasing diversity in AI. And I sit on the board on ACGSV, so it's amazing to work with you, Yvonne. But and before I joined Deloitte, I used to also sit on a number of boards for startups. I also sit on the advisory board for the Cal Poly School of Engineering because it's on their industrial advisory board, and that's how they know how to update the curriculum to reflect where the industry is going, where to be ahead of the trends. So I wear several hats. I have 2 teenagers. My older one is heading off to college next week, and the younger one is 14, same age as your son, Yvonne, and he just started high school. So one starting high school, the other, starting college. So it's very interesting times.
Yeah, busy.
Very busy.
Perfect. Well, so we know that you are one of the few women that work in artificial intelligence. So what attracted you to that field?
Yeah, I think, I got very fortunate. So I studied AI as part of the computer science degree. It was one of the subjects. But at that time, and totally dating myself here, at that time we couldn't do much beyond theory, right? It was everything was, there was no compute or access to data, yeah, that would enable us to really try out anything. So it was more in terms of theory. And because I anchored my career on data, it just evolved because AI is all based on data, right? So growing right from the SQL to big data, then there's business intelligence and analytics. So AI just naturally it evolved, having anchored on the data field. And I think uh, it and Yvonne, we were talking right before this, right? Just like you, I've always been fascinated by data and numbers, and just being able to look at data and arrive at insights which you would not get otherwise, right? So whether that data is being used for reporting what happened, now it is used, that same data is being used to predict what will happen. So, I think it's that next evolution of data that is where we are with AI. And I think there is going to be something beyond AI as well, which is going to be driven by data.
Very interesting. Yeah, and you, I already mentioned you are a minority in the field, and because I like data so much, according to the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI's 2021 AI Index report, well, that's a mouthful, women make up just 16% of tenure track faculty focused on AI globally. And Deloitte published a report that I read that in 2019, women accounted for only 22% of all AI and computer science PhD programs in North America, which was just 4% higher than the same statistical category from 2010. So this shows us that women are very much underrepresented in artificial intelligence and in the tech industry altogether.
Broadly.
So gender diversity in AI has been persistent and unmoving for a while now. So what do you think is driving this gender gap in AI specifically?
AI is just one subset within the broader STEM and tech, right? There is very few women who are there in tech, and AI specifically, it is even more less because there is a myth that you need to understand deep math or science. You need to be really good with numbers to be part of the AI industry, which is not true. I, in fact, believe that AI can race ahead of the rest of the tech fields in increasing gender diversity or diversity in general, because AI actually needs domain knowledge. It needs subject matter expertise. When you're building an AI product for healthcare, for example, you need the doctors and nurses inherent domain knowledge. If you're building an AI product for education, you need teachers' inputs, right? So I believe that AI can actually achieve more gender diversity. We're still in very early stages with AI, so that's why more geeks like me are part of it. But and meaning people with a computer science degree. But I think we're going to see in the next 5 years more people who don't have a background in computer science or AI becoming part of this, because the need for subject matter experts is going to grow, right? What we've done so far with AI is people like me who have a computer science background try to guess, and there is enough low-hanging fruit within business processes or how business is done that we can guess, oh yeah, this part can be automated, right? Because it is so obvious that this can be solved by technology. But for AI to reach its next level, it will have to be these teachers, the nurses, the doctors, the subject matter experts to be involved, to be part of AI to help take it to its next level, because the next wave of solutions is going to need subject matter experts. So, I'm very hopeful, but to answer your question, there are a few reasons. One is the myth that you need to understand, you need to know math, which even today you don't. You still, you need creative people for designing, the screens for the app, for example, right? You need designers, you need testers, you need real human testers testing out these AI apps to make sure that it considers all possible scenarios. It needs product managers who understand the domain well and can translate it into a technology statement. So that myth that you need to have deep math knowledge and you need to have a PhD in machine learning to be part of AI is, I feel, compared to the rest of tech industry, that is one of the big reasons that we don't find as much gender diversity in AI, because there's already we've seen big statements around how most women don't study math or statistics because they are already underwhelmed. And I've certainly seen in my personal experience, being on the advisory board for the university, that there are very few women enrolling for these courses. So that's one myth. The other one is, we are seeing so much immediate value with whatever AI is being created. Companies are seeing so much immediate, whether it's from a cost savings perspective or from a revenue generation perspective. The need for diversity in AI is, I feel, it's not as high a priority as it should be, because you're already seeing the value without really, worrying about increasing the diversity part, right? So it's become more of a nice to have. But I do think it is going to change. That is going to change as well. So those are the
Well,
two unique things from an AI perspective compared to the rest of tech.
right. Well, but since you just said that uh, the need might not be there, going back to my data, Gartner had predicted that in 2022, 85% of AI projects will deliver erroneous outcomes owing to bias in data, algorithms, or the teams responsible for managing the teams. So
Yeah.
one of the more effective ways to address that would be to engage diverse teams throughout the process. And that doesn't seem to be done. And it's so important, especially in AI. So
Yeah.
let's,
Yeah, unless it becomes an absolute business imperative, it usually doesn't happen. The other challenge is also, there's not necessarily, there is data that exists, just like there's data that exists. More diverse boards make better companies, right? But unless there is data that exists that vaccination can help, with the situation that we're living in right now,
yeah.
right? The data can say it, but unless there is a strong business imperative, we may not see that. And I believe the regulators and governments are catching up, and we're going to see one of the biggest things that will emerge in the next 2 to 3 years will be regulations and policies, which will help drive some of these changes that's needed. And my hope is, through that, you're also going to see some more diversity becoming, a top topic.
Right, right. So I have one more statistic. And then, a 2020 LinkedIn report found that AI specialist is the top emerging job in the US. And with hiring growth for the role increasing 74% annually over the past 4 years. So you mentioned earlier you founded Humans for AI. How can we get more women involved in this? What are you doing
Yeah,
to help change the
yeah,
face of AI, or the
yeah.
back of AI?
Yeah, no, that is so true. And it actually stemmed from a frustration that I was dealing with, both on a professional front and a personal front. On the professional front, like, I've built data science teams, AI teams from scratch, and I always struggle to find, diverse candidates. Whether it is gender diversity, or or race or ethnic or geographic background, any kind of diversity was hard to find, because because of those candidates don't exist. So you have to kind of change that notion that AI is only for PhDs or math geeks, right? And the other, on the personal front, it was more of, I get invited, I still do, to speak at a lot of events and panels, and usually I'm the only woman speaker. And it was like, that's not right. And we need more women role models out there. We need more women who understand AI and who are part of this. We need to bust some of those myths. So and I distinctly remember, this was about 4 years ago. There were a few big headlines from large tech companies out here in the Silicon Valley saying that we make AI accessible to all, or we make AI available to all. And I would get really excited because that seems like an obvious step, make AI access understandable for everybody. But then when I went and checked, it said prerequisite is you need to know Python. And I'm like, that is not all. You are really just trying to fix your short-term problem of not getting enough data scientists or data engineers. You want to, help convert IT folks into data science or AI folks so you can fill the jobs that are open, right? So, having Python as a required prerequisite is not making AI available for all. And so I distinctly remember seeing that and I'm like, oh, forget it, because that this is just not going to work. So, that's what prompted me to set up Humans for AI as a nonprofit. And our goal is very simple, to make AI literacy available for all. Now, what I mean by that is AI literacy, meaning if you don't know anything about AI and you read a newspaper article on AI, you actually understand what those big words mean, or what does machine learning really do, like explained in very simple terms, right? So it is just AI literacy. So get everybody AI literate, right, so that they can read a newspaper article or listen to a conversation like this and they understand what is AI really capable of, what part of it is hype and myth, what is the what is these buzzwords actually mean. Because if everybody is AI literate, it basically empowers them to have a voice, right, as policies are being made, as regulations are being made, when they have to vote on something that involves AI, they actually can have an input to it. So that's the first goal. So AI literacy. And our hope is, as people learn more about AI, just get that AI literacy, and we're specifically targeting not groups that work with women and underrepresented minorities, because that's where we want to drive AI literacy. And then the hope is, once they're AI literate, maybe they'll get interested into actually joining an AI team and say, oh, it will be cool if I can become a designer or a product manager, or maybe I want to become a data scientist, because all those courses exist. What doesn't exist today is a truly like an AI for everyone, right? So our goal is to really drive AI literacy primarily for women and underrepresented minorities, to educate them, to empower them to understand and be part of the AI conversation at the bare minimum. And the hope is that, once they understand it, then they might, be able to pursue a career in AI in any one of the, roles. Like there's data scientists and data engineers, highly technical roles, but there's product managers, there's project managers, semi-technical, but then there is also designers and testers and QA, right? There are so many roles within AI that doesn't really need a PhD. So we want to kind of remove that barrier of and eliminate some of those myths. And I'll give you one of the things that we have a number of programs that we do as to achieve our mission. Whether it is doing through meetups where we partner with say a teachers organization, right, and we're providing basic AI literacy, or whether we have an ambassador program highlighting role models. But what we've just before the COVID, actually we started working with universities to and I'll share a very specific one where we actually did a partnership with UC Berkeley, and help them build out a foundation where they there are it's funded by Berkeley alumni and the Berkeley network, but It is really being able to provide scholarships for women and URMs who want to study AI at Berkeley. But we also developed a very specific 1-week program which provides this basic AI literacy. And it's in partnership between Humans for AI and UC Berkeley. For me, the most touching part of that was we partnered with an organization. So it was a class of 50, but we got 10 students from an organization called Love Never Fails. And that organization helps human trafficking victims once they're rescued, because most human trafficking victims are in that middle school, high school age group, and they never get to finish their education. So once they're rescued, this organization helps these kids, these people, to finish their education and get a high school diploma. So our partnership was, once they do that, we got in 10 students from that cohort to be there in the class and get basic AI literacy. And it was fascinating for them. It was like, we would never, nobody would have told us about AI and what this means if this didn't exist, right? So it is trying to reach people who otherwise just wouldn't have access to AI, right? Giving them some education, because here's the other trend that I've noticed, having managed very large teams and, from my professional career, is men self-educate themselves. Men will go for the meetups. Men will get themselves trained. Women, not so much. I'll give you an example is, look, when I was studying, I said AI didn't exist, but iPhones didn't exist either, right? And there were new jobs that were created, like an iOS developer, mobile developer, SEO expert, search engine optimizer expert. Those roles didn't exist, but the jobs got created, the roles got created, they got filled by mostly men, because men take that, take that initiative to get themselves trained. Women, it's that age we are at where we get busy with family. We just don't make it a priority to go and train ourselves. So if we don't do anything, that will just continue. I'm at a point where I feel that, if we don't have enough women in AI or diversity in AI, it is a much, much bigger problem than not having enough women on boards or women iOS developers, because AI is about intelligence. And if we don't, put in our perspectives into intelligence that's being encoded and scale it out, it is going to have much, much bigger impact than prior or other technologies. So that, being in this space and, realizing that, we are all going to be in really bad place if we don't have, all kinds of humans inputs in AI, that, and it's not good for AI as well. That's what prompted me to set up the nonprofit.
Perfect. And you seem to be doing really great work. Apologize. So thank you for that. And that's all the questions I have. Anybody, Laura, thank you for putting the link in the window, in the chat. Excuse me. Anybody else have any questions?
I have one. So I find it really interesting that the young men in their 30s are really good generally with computer, with AI, with programming, and my 20-some-year-old sons are they grew up playing games and all that. So women, well, I'm really good at design, okay, and strategies and verbal content. So collaborate with those younger millennials, men. It seems like men are just naturally attracted to computers and cars more than women. Well, I'm not trying to be kind of stereotyping women, but it's just they just so attracted to this more than us. I'm never going to be in love with computer, frankly, okay? But I use AI in marketing. I subscribe to a lot of good softwares to serve my clients. and we use AI and human intelligence. I frankly find that AI is really nothing without human intelligence. It needs to be trained. It needs to be guided. It needs to be taught so many ways. And at the end of the day, it's still the human intelligence that is making that magic touch, that personal, emotional, and also it's very wordy AI, because it's not very succinct, because it takes wisdom to summarize a lot of it. So I mean, to the extent it's useful, I still enjoy what I do, but it adds a lot of value to my clients, the companies that I brand, the individuals that I brand, and then to amplify their messaging with content, very good content, yeah. But I think the world is a sad place to live when AI is going to be training us. And I really want to be adamant about this, that technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
Good point. Good point. And to your point, Joanne, too, I think now that STEM is so much more prevalent in schools, I see that younger girls and young women are getting much more interested in the subject. Although my son has taken a computer engineering class as a sophomore at high school, and there, out of the 20 kids in there, there's only 4 girls. At least there are 4 girls, but still there are only 4 girls. So let's just hope that with the STEM movement that has started, that the younger generation is more encouraged and to participate in and get interested in those subjects.
Yeah, Yvonne, I was going to, in my son's computer science class, it was the same, same kind of statistic. And we actually saw a very similar problem at university as well, where very few women enrolling. And even if they enroll for computer science or math, they were dropping off. Like 51% of them would actually change their major to something else in the first 6 months. And, so when we did further research, what we found out was that they've, because they were already in minority, they never felt they fit in. And it's that age, right? Like you and I have confidence because we have our experiences and our age backing us. But when you're that age, you're not really included in conversations, you feel you're the odd one out. It just takes one comment or one remark to say, you know what, I'm not going to do it. The other big part is also, we feel that we are raising awareness by saying there's only, 10% women, or some women got discriminated, right? We see those stories, right? We feel that we are raising awareness. I've seen the other side of it where these girls are thinking, why should I sign up for a career where it's going to be a continuous uphill battle? Let me just choose a career where I don't have to fight this battle on a daily basis. Right. So it's a balancing act between, between sharing the statistics, but still being able to put it in a positive way so that you can encourage them to say, we can change the statistics and it is going to be better, because it works both ways.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Lara?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So I actually work at ARM, and so we create a lot of designs that people then make chips off. Just basically what we do is we license IP for people to create chips. And I'm actually their privacy attorney. And one of the areas that I get involved with is working with the design around confidential compute. And that's just a way to keep data private. That's data in use. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds because I don't want to lose people on where I'm going with this. But I certainly didn't mean to offend anybody's sense of intelligence by saying that. But if you don't deal with it every day, but anyway, and one of the other areas that I work with the machine learning team is federated learning, and then the use of synthetic data. as opposed to real data for privacy reasons, because in some reasons, regions of the world, you can't collect the data you need to train the models. Like in Europe, you have privacy restraints around just collecting traffic data, because you could get someone's car license plate and that's personal data. So you can't train a model, or people are walking by a camera. So do you see a lot of that being feasible?
I think so. I think there is a lot of work being done in synthetic data, and it helps us, create data that is unbiased. The reality is, if you look at real data, it is biased,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
So,
real reflection of society, right?
it is, yeah, it's just what society looks like. I mean, so AI is just going to reflect those biases and take it. So I think synthetic data is a big opportunity for us to actually help make it, unbiased, make it, create that perfect world we want to by removing those biases from data. There is a lot of opportunity there, Lara, and I'm so glad that you work in a space like that. But I do think that we'll see a lot more coming with synthetic data. There's also a lot of research being done. Like most models require massive amounts of data, right? But there's a lot of work being done on being able to train models on small data where you don't need large amounts of data, right? But it's a ways to go. There's still a lot of work to be done. It's still early stage. I like to give this analogy of, we are in this space where, think of, three parallel streams, each one moving at its own speed, right? The first stream is AI research, like you're discovering the next wave of deep learning, you're discovering the next wave of, neural network, neuromorphic computing, right? There's still a lot of research that's happening in the universities and with research groups. There's a lot of work happening, right? So this technology is still maturing. Then there's the second stream where we've taken a technology that is not fully developed and we're applying it in the real world because we see value right now with it. So we are seeing it applied across different industries and companies. That's the second stream. Then there's a third stream. The second stream is value creation. The third stream is all the negative impacts, the risks that we have not thought of because we don't know, right? So think of this as that first stream is you are developing a car engine, right? And the first time that car engine has been created, it's not fully developed. We don't know all the kinks yet. We don't know how all the ways it could go wrong, but we've put a car body on top of it and we're driving it because it is still faster than walking and it gets us from point A to point B faster. And that's what the AI is doing. It is not fully developed, but it is still helping us show value in the real world, right? So we are using a car with not a fully developed engine. And we don't know, we don't know what the carbon footprint could be, whether the engine could blow up, whether the engine could cause a crash, and we don't have the lanes defined, we don't have the speed limit set, we don't have even the roads fully built for that car to run. So, we are in this very interesting phase where everything is still developing or in different stages. Each one is moving at its own pace, and everybody's trying to figure it out. I think we will figure it out over the next decade. We're going to see regulations, we're going to see those speed limits being set, we're going to see the lanes being defined, we're going to see best practices and playbooks coming out by industry. We're going to see a lot of things maturing in that third stream, right? But it's only this is just going to continue on an ongoing basis because this technology is still maturing and still growing and developing, right? So nobody has it all figured out, but it's also our opportunity to shape it, to help define the speed limits, help define the lanes, right? So I like to think of it that way, and that keeps me optimistic. Because honestly, the speed limits were not there when the first car started driving on a road, right?
Sure. Yeah. So you're looking at the rules of the road, the rules of
Yeah.
engagement. Yeah.
They don't
Gotcha.
exist,
Yeah.
and we need to figure it out, right? And it has been done in the past, so I know humans can figure it out.
One would hope.
Definitely. Thank you.
Very optimistic about this approach, and I really like your analogy there. Anybody else have a question? Otherwise, we'll just go to kind of introducing ourselves and the networking portion. That's it. All right. Okay, so let's stop. Let me see if I can do that.